Good morning, everyone. It's just after 10, and we've got a busy, full program for you this morning, so we'll get cracking. So a very warm welcome, and thank you very much for attending this virtual insight session, part of the CAB's Route to Rural Week, taking place not only this week, but also over the course of the last few weeks, with various mainly in-person events taking up in place up and down the country. Also wanted to highlight the social media campaign, which has just got underway. And you'll see that on the usual social media channels, so watch out for that. And we're going to flag a couple of those early on in this presentation. So I hope that's helpful. By way of introduction, I'm David Steele, and I'm chair of the CAB's Education and Examination Committee. I'm going to give this short introduction before our various speakers take over. And then I'll come back at the end and cover the question and answer session and wrap up at about 12:30. My day job is Chief Executive of Dorney Estates, two diversified rural estates in North Yorkshire. And before that, I was in practice with two national surveying firms for 25 years. Crucially, Route to Rural Week is the centrepiece of our work to attract more recruits to our profession, to help with the ever-growing workload and to strengthen the future of our practices up and down the country. The CAB has more fellows than ever before and more probationers than ever before, about 3,000 in total between those two groups. Yet we need more to cover the work that our clients need. Hence, the Route to Rural is our practical self-awareness solution designed to stimulate interest in our profession as a career. In terms of a career, I guess the key message I wanted to convey in my introduction was just how interesting and varied our day jobs are. Literally, it's a bit of a cliche, but literally no 2 days are the same. And I really hope you might hear that from others later on during this presentation. With the mix of being desk-based and also out and about a lot, away from the office environment, meeting clients and other professionals too. That's what makes, for me, it just so interesting. And as I say, hopefully you'll get a sense of that as we go through the other presentations this morning. Importantly, also, Route to Rural is the combined project of the CAB, employers and universities, as I say, with the primary aim of attracting more to the rural surveying profession. I suppose one of the points I wanted to make in terms of the variety, in terms of a theme, there's various routes into rural, into the profession, which we'll cover during this presentation. The various types of employers, large firms, small firms, institutions, charities, government bodies, and estates, such as where I work, up and down the country. So there's a variety of work types, variety of employers, varieties of routes into the profession, and of course, a variety of employment locations from the north of Scotland to the southwest of the country. So hold that variety theme in your minds as you listen to our brilliant presenters. So as you've seen, we've got a varied programme and a series of short presentations from supporting employers and hopefully showcasing the cross-section of variety of work that we can get involved with. There are various touch points and interaction points during the presentation, so please be aware of those and take part. We're really grateful to not only those presenting this morning, but all those who have helped us reach this point in the Route to Rural campaign from behind the scenes. And you can see on the slide there some of the supporting firms, and there's many others behind the scenes too. So grateful thanks to everybody involved. So in closing, I really hope those on the webinar will find the next couple of hours or so really interesting and informative. And importantly, there's lots of excellent further information on the CAB website. There's a Route to Rural page, so look for that and then dig deep into all the wonderful information in there, including, I might highlight some sources of work experience in offices up and down the country, and that's often a really good way to lead into the profession. In terms of housekeeping, just very briefly, please note the webinar is being recorded, so it can be accessed by others after this morning. We're aiming to finish at about 12:30, and we're going to have a 10-minute break at about 11:30, 11:35. A really last important point from me, please can participants post questions in the question box. It's a square box with a question mark. It'd be really good to get your questions, and we've got this amazing panel at this end, and we can cover hopefully a real variety of questions. So please do post those. I'll field those at the end allocate them to our panel. And also the presenters will just flow one from the other as we go through, rather than coming back to me to introduce, so that's okay. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over shortly to Martin Hall from Davidson and Robertson, a surveying firm in practice. And we're starting with some gravitas, I might add, because Martin has just finished a brilliant term of office as the CAV national president. So we're starting with some big hitters, and we're very grateful for Martin's time and input. So I'm going to hand over to Martin and let him take over. And I think he's got a video to start, just again to pique people's interest. But thank you so much, and we'll see you at the end for Q&A.
Thank you, David, and welcome everyone. Good to join you on this virtual taster day. I thought we would start by having a look at the video that was launched yesterday. It really does give a good insight into our world. And so if we could press play for the video, please.
You know when people say you're really into farming, they instantly picture you driving a tractor or putting your hand in cows. Well, that's not the only option. Have you ever heard of agricultural valuing? So basically, ag valuers figure out how much land and property is worth, whether that's farms, fields, estates, or even that old woodland your drunk uncle brags about at Christmas. Part detective work, part number crunching. It's like you're a spy. And part getting your boots muddy. It's best of both worlds, for real, it's lit. So one day you might be out measuring fields, the next you'll be running the numbers with the client and advising them. You're giving main character energy. And you're the person that landowners and farmers call when they need the deets. Plus, you get to make a big impact, shaping how rural communities grow, helping farmers, and deciding what land is worth in the 21st century. It just hits different. So if you're into a career that's smart, outdoorsy, low-key powerful, and definitely not boring, maybe it's time to add agricultural valuer to your For You page of life choices. Links below. Go check it out. Don't sleep on it.
It really shows that our work is what I call the enabler of the countryside. We make stuff happen, whether that's buying it, selling it, valuing it, managing it, developing it, energizing it, connecting it, or conserving it. We're really involved in all of those things within the countryside. As David already highlighted, the purpose of today is really we need more people in our sector. And hopefully, from the things you'll hear today, you'll get a real sense of the variety that's on offer. I would also say our skills are very good in that they can be exported, and often are. And these could be exported into other sectors, whether that's chief executives of companies, or project managers, or developers, or whatever it might be. Also around the world. And I have colleagues that work in different countries, in Australia and New Zealand, in South America. And so it really is a passport to a much larger opportunity. This slide requires a bit of interaction, if I could. So I'm going to go to each picture, and I would like you to put into the question box what immediately springs to mind when you see it. So the first is a picture of a cow, and if you could be dropping comments into that would be really helpful. Comments coming in for that one? I can see a few. There's a whole variety. There's some saying beef, some saying black, some saying burgers, some saying dairy. But actually, in our world, it is about valuing. It's potentially about selling through a market, a livestock market, or it might be about managing a dairy or a beef herd or a dairy herd on an in-hand farming enterprise. We next have a tractor. Again, if you could drop comments in, that would be really good. It's the question box. Yeah, see a few coming in. Yeah, there's a couple there about Jeremy Clarkson on his tractor. A couple recognize it's a John Deere. Yeah, but in our world, yeah, all of those things are correct. But it's probably about either valuing it as part of a whole farm valuation, including the machinery, or it might be about managing a contract farming agreement. So a bit like Caleb Cooper does on Clarkson's farm, he has the contracting on the farm, and that would be part of that enterprise. We next have an arable crop. Again, if you could drop in, that would be good. Coming in for that one. It is a crop of wheat, of course. The largest crop grown in the UK. And this one in our world, it's the marketing of the crop, the contract farming agreement that we've already touched on, the actual farming of the land that we arrange between a landowner and someone that has the machinery and the expertise to do that. And there's a bit of on Clarkson's farm, the cheerful Charlie. He comes in and manages the cropping on the farm. On the next, we have a farmhouse. This could be a variety of things, but as you'll be aware, we sell it, we buy it, value it, we manage it, or we might be developing fields for housing. Probably not in that style, of course, but certainly involved in that and renovation.
Martin, we've got an interesting one here. Somebody said leaky roof for the house.
And probably true.
Yeah, country house, downsizing, living the dream in the country. So very interesting. Oh, heritage laws, value of the premises.
Yeah, very good. There's some educated people watching, I can tell. Yeah, and all of those things, absolutely right. Yeah. Heritage is a whole nother angle. We next have some woodlands there down at the bottom corner. Again, if you can pop anything into the question box on that. But in our world, we're involved in the whole remit with woodlands, whether that's planting them, advising on planting, managing them until they're fully grown. It might be public access through it. It might be recreation like Go Ape or something similar. Or it might be selling the woodland at the end of the process.
Yep, we've got a few here. Forestry Commission, health and well-being walks, it's lovely. Forest management, planning permission to chop, and tree surgeons disappearing fast.
Yeah, well, we're involved with all of those, of course. We have a picture of Caleb, who's a well-known character from Clarkson's farm. I think what Caleb has done is demonstrating to many people all the different jobs that happen on a typical farming enterprise in Britain. Sam, I'm not sure if there's any comments coming on that, but
we have entrepreneur, inspiration, diversification. That's well, there's one more coming in. Let's have a look. Social media, relatable, very likable.
Yeah, so there's a good bit in there about marketing, and we're all involved in marketing, whether it's marketing ourselves or through social media, or is it marketing property for clients and selling it to the best advantage. I think could we move on to the next slide? So this is a slightly different version, but this I think shows how all of the bits come together. It shows how we engage with technology through drones now for measuring or for selling property, taking photographs and videos, whether it's enabling agreements, and there are a number of pictures of agreements there, whether it's sale of property, leasing of property, whatever that might be. There's a number of renewable energy projects there, the turbines throughout, and that's a busy sector for us just now as we re-energize Britain for renewable energy, which is all good and employs a large number of our people. And on the right-hand side, I think it shows how we all interact with that. So they all interact with each other. That's people, property, farming, energy, technology, and the environment. And we understand how all of those elements fit together. So I think that is a useful introduction. And I think without any further ado, I'm going to hand now over to Henry and Ailey of Bidwells, who's going to give you a bit more of a flavour. So, Henry and Ailey.
Thanks, Martin. If we can go to the next slide, please. So surveying. If you Google surveying, you'll likely see images of somebody in a high-vis jacket looking through a tripod on a roadside or on a field. And whilst that is a small part of the profession, the term surveying encompasses far more. Surveying is often misunderstood as purely technical or construction related. But in rural context, it's much broader, involving the management of land, people, and natural resources. It's a powerful way to influence how land is used, protected, and developed, not just through practical management, but by shaping policy, supporting communities, and being a positive voice for sustainable change. Surveyors and land professionals play a vital role in balancing environmental stewardship, economic viability, and social responsibility, making decisions that have lasting impacts on landscapes, livelihoods, and legislation. If we go on to the next slide, please. So some of the key roles of a rural property professional are listed in the slide, and they include surveyors, first of all. They're typically involved in measuring and assessing land, buildings, boundaries, and farms. They provide expert advice on land use, access rights, and environmental impact. This is helping shape how land is developed and protected. Secondly, land agents. They manage estates and farms, they negotiate leases and advise on diversification, grants, and rural policy. They often act as a link between landowners, tenants, and external stakeholders. Estate managers, they're responsible for the day-to-day running of rural estates. They oversee farming operations, conservation efforts, tourism, and much more. Their work is hands-on and tailored to the needs of individual estates. Agricultural valuers, they assess the value of the farmland, the building, the crops, and the rural businesses. Their expertise is essential for sales, taxation, planning, and compensation claims. Rural estate agents, they specialise in selling farms, estates, country houses, and land. They often deal with complex legal matters. And finally, agricultural liaison officers. They work with utility companies and infrastructure projects to ensure landowners are fairly represented during developments such as pylon, pipelines, and wind farms, and much more. They're usually the go-between between companies and landowners. In essence, rural surveying is about understanding the land, not just measuring it, but managing it and protecting it and unlocking its potential for future generations. I'll now pass on to my colleague Henry.
Perfect. So could we have the next slide, please? So as obviously Ailey and others have all alluded to, a career in rural surveying is incredibly diverse, and there are numerous avenues you can go down. So while a lot of us all on the call would all be classed as surveyors, everyone's got a complete range of expertise and specialisms which they can go down. And many of these are all completely interconnected and do overlap. When you're in the industry, you end up coming across all of these different areas and all the different specialists in the who have this specific knowledge. So starting with valuation, this is obviously specialising in the valuing of rural property, land and businesses, and this can be for the purpose of sales, transactions, compensation claims. It's a very analytical and very high responsibility area of work. It involves a lot of site visits, walking around farms and property, a lot of negotiation with different parties, having a deep understanding of land, markets, farms, and then combining that with office-based work and reporting. The next real common area is estate and property management. So this involves the managing of rural estates, farms, and investment portfolios. This includes working with different tenancies, lease agreements, let farms, renewable projects, diversification initiatives, and essentially anything that comes across the desk associated with rural land and property comes to an estate manager at some point, and they'll be responsible for making a decision, taking action, understanding when specialist expertise is needed, and essentially managing client expectations and their strategy to get the most out of their land and their property. So another key area is utilities and infrastructure. This involves working on major wind farms, power lines, transport routes like HS2. This involves negotiating land access, compensation claims, collaborating with estates, and essentially being the link between multiple different parties to deliver these huge projects. It's a very fast-paced and evolving sector with a very sort of physical and real-world impact. This sort of links quite closely to net zero and environmental industries. This is probably the fastest growing area of our industry. Land is increasingly required to deliver environmental outcomes, whether that's through offsetting, changes in farming practices, or entering into carbon and biodiversity markets. This is a new area that lots of people are working to get involved with. There's a lot of interest from non-landowning parties in this sector, so it's a real opportunity for the surveying profession to have a real impact and be the driving force behind real-world change. And then the final thing really is probably managing and looking after rural businesses in whatever form they take, whether that's our own business as surveyors, whether that's helping clients with their farming businesses. Farming is going through a pretty tough time at the moment, so it's looking at other opportunities, having a deep understanding of those businesses and income streams, and also working out what is the appropriate course of action to navigate some sort of real world pressures, whether that's economic, environmental, or social. So having a deep understanding of how businesses work, how rural communities interact, and understanding people is really critical. So I think in summary, whether you're passionate about environment, businesses, law, rural surveying offers a very meaningful and varied career that's deeply connected to the land and its future. Ultimately, every aspect of rural surveying, no matter the specialism, involves working, communicating, and negotiating with a huge variety of people. So if working with people and understanding people is an area you're interested in and something you're able to do, then rural surveying offers a huge amount of opportunity. Thank you very much. I will now pass on to Oscar and Mo.
Okay, it's great to see you all here on today's session. So I'm going to talk you through the role of what an infrastructure surveyor might do and how important their work can be in helping to achieve net zero. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'd like to start off first of all with a picture round. So feel free to pop your answers into the question box. So the first one is on the screen now. So please have a guess at what this might be.
Nothing yet. I would suggest
Okay.
a couple of. Oh no, hang on. Somebody said waste site, which is better. I was going to say paddling pools, but very large ones. Water cleaning. Yeah, I think anaerobic digester.
Oh, interesting. I don't know what one of those are, but yeah, certainly it's a water treatment. So so yeah, so we obviously have that. Next picture, please. Okay, has anyone seen one of these yet? I haven't actually in person.
Sort of looks like a strange pylon to me. No suggestions coming yet. Perhaps nobody has seen one.
So yep, so it is actually a pylon. It's a new style pylon called a T-pylon. So you may start to see these cropping up out and about in the countryside, but certainly they're sort of a new design that's been input to replace or instead of the old traditional triangular pylons that we have. Okay, next picture, please. Okay, has anyone seen these when they're out having their country walks?
I have to say I haven't. Just waiting to see if anybody else has.
Although I have to say I do see them now everywhere, so now I know what they are.
Utility marker, way markers, gas line marker.
Yeah, that's right. So it's to identify where the pipes are running through a stretch of land or farmland, and it's obviously to help make sure that we don't dig up where those pipes are and cause any explosions or leaks. Okay, next picture. Okay, has anyone seen these?
Looks like a water pipe, but let's have a look. Drainage outlet we have as a guess.
Yeah, so it's a water waste outlet pipe. So I think there's work currently being done to upgrade these and make them look a bit better, so that they fit better into the countryside. And then final picture, please.
I have to say I am not sure what that is myself. Power plant has
Yep. So
energy
an
farm.
electricity, yeah, so electricity substation. So you probably won't see these. Obviously, that's a sort of a bird's eye view of one, but usually they're probably surrounded by trees and walls and things. So great. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so utilities and infrastructure. So what are utilities? So as Henry's already mentioned earlier, that we have, obviously, we've got water, electricity, oil, fibre, gas, and hydrogen. So next point, please. So all of these help to, sorry, an infrastructure surveyor will make sure that we install and work with various people in various teams to input the infrastructure in place. So all the things we take for granted, the pipe works in the ground, the overhead pylons, HS2, new transport links, all these things are a pivotal part of the infrastructure surveyor role. And we have to make sure that it all gets there through our various means of infrastructure. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so if you're thinking about a career in being an infrastructure surveyor, there are lots of skills that are required, and the role is quite varied as well. So a key part of the role is stakeholder engagement. So you'll be working with a variety of people, from utility companies to landowners, construction workers, engineers, other land agents, ecologists, geologists. All those people will play a part in placing the infrastructure onto the land. You'll also need to have information and knowledge about land access, so the legal aspects of the work. Also negotiation is a key skill that's required, data collection as well, and making sure that the advice that you give is accurate. Also mentioned earlier was compensation claims for where potentially farmers may lose income where we've dug up the land and they've lost the income from either arable or from the feeding of their livestock. And then also, finally, once we've done the work, we have to understand the land and make sure that we rectify any damage done and make sure that that sustainability is put back into the land for further use. Next slide, please. Okay. So how do sort of the rural work and the infrastructure work impact urban landowners? So there's lots of people involved in the process. As mentioned, the stakeholder management, we all have to work together to make sure that the infrastructure is put in place, people turn up at the right time, on the right projects. So it's making sure that your role will be to really make sure that all these people come together and almost project manage the pipes and the cables that go into the land. Next slide, please. Okay, so some examples of some current national projects and really important projects that are taking place. So you may have heard about the National Grid upgrade. So you'll see this on adverts, I certainly have, and what the aim of this is basically to upgrade our electricity grid, and it's the biggest one in generations. So we've got to build 5 times the amount of electricity and infrastructure compared with what we have delivered over the last 30 years. So again, you know, it's a massive growth sector for surveyors. We've got increased housing. This drive to net zero means that we have to not just rely on burning carbon, we have to think about renewable energy as well. So thinking about what is clean energy, so your solar, your wind, offshore, and making sure that obviously that's got to then get into our homes and for us to use as electricity or energy in on our work and home places, and also industry as well. Another project is the HyNet Drive to Net Zero. So if you could just press on the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so the Net Zero HyNet project is a big project that's taken place in the northwest of England, in North Wales and Liverpool area. So it's the first 100% hydrogen pipeline network that's currently being built. So again, infrastructure surveyors are heavily involved with that project, and hopefully this will produce and we'll be able to store and distribute hydrogen as a mean of energy across the UK. So this is a big sort of leading part of the work that we're doing to make our energy greener for future generations. Next slide, please. So we've got a little video here for you, and this has been put together by National Grid. So if you could press play, please.
We've all heard about climate change, and now everyone's talking about reaching net zero. But how are they related? Let's start with the problem. Climate change has been triggered by an excess of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide and methane, in the Earth's atmosphere. These gases trap the heat from the sun, which warms our planet even more. We're already seeing the effects through more extreme weather and melting polar ice contributing to rising sea levels. And this will only get worse if our planet's temperature continues to go up. One way we can all help is to do our bit to get to net zero. But what exactly is net zero? Think about running a bath. Turn on the taps and water is added. Pull out the plug and water flows out. To keep the water at the same level, you need to ensure what you put in and what you take out is balanced. Reaching net zero works in a similar way. We need to balance the amount of greenhouse gases we put into the atmosphere with the amount we take out. What we do to limit emissions in the next decade is critical to our future. From countries and companies to families and individuals, we can all play a role in our journey to net zero, which will help slow climate change.
Okay, so net zero, that was a nice little introduction there about what net zero is. So the UK government has set a target that we need to have zero emissions by 2050, which actually isn't that far away, only less than 25 years now. So we need to make sure that we're maximising our green sources like wind, solar power, and some of you may already have some of these infrastructures in your homes already, solar panels and also heat pumps as well. So there's lots of work going into how we can make greener energy, and the role of the infrastructure surveyor is to make sure that we get the energy from the source into our homes and workplaces. Next slide, please. So in summary, if you're interested in a career in infrastructure, so I think some of the key things that stand out to me with individuals that are keen in this area of surveying is that you've really got to love enjoying working with people and great at building relationships. That is a real key point of this role. You've got to be passionate about making a difference and about climate change and green energy. Ultimately, the work that the infrastructure surveyors do is pivotal in making sure that future generations have got electricity, power and energy in their homes and for businesses for the future. So what we don't want to happen is that, you know, we have power cuts. So all of this work is to make sure that we have that difference for the future, and we address that issue now. The other thing this role would be is that you've got to love being outside and out and about, because you'll often be accessing land, making sure that the land is put back to use as it was prior to being dug up, potentially if the pipe work's been installed. So you really need to enjoy also being outside. It's definitely not a desk job, 9 to 5, sat on a computer all day. So if that's your thing, then this is a great way to get out there and really make a difference for future generations. So that's an overview of the infrastructure. Thank you. I'll hand over now to Estate and Property Management with Ed.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mo. Morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. As kindly said, I'm here to talk to you guys about estates and property management. So, next slide, please. So, some of you might recognise this as Downton Abbey, also known as Highclere Castle. So, we're going to start this. There's a few photos to run through. So, if we go on to the next slide as well, please. So, it's a beautiful bit of rolling countryside. And next slide again, please, as well. And this is just obviously a rural village pub. And I'd quite like to guys put into the question box what you think all these three things have in common. And Sam, if you could keep an eye on that, please, so we see we've got what we think the answers coming through. So what have a big old house, say Downton Abbey, some rolling countryside, and a village pub got in common?
The first answer we've got here is real estate, history. Interesting.
Yep.
Bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
All owned by the same person? Question mark. And legacy.
Fantastic. Well, thanks you guys for engaging in that. So the answer is all of those things are absolutely correct, and they're also all properties that you can have on a rural estate, as well as we've just had a brilliant introduction to infrastructure, solar panels, wind turbines, anything and everything. And yes, they can be owned by the same group of people, but often it's charities and institutions as well. So this is all part of the varied job, and I think this is a real theme of today, is that in one morning you can be having a meeting in a very big old house talking about how the roof is about to fall in, and then you can be going and kneeling on a gate and chatting to a farmer, and then straight into the pub to talk about how tenants going on, or if the estate runs it, what's going on. So next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit about the day-to-day, so you get a good feel for it here. So quite often it's talking about property inspections and talking about repairs and maintenance. So I think the other thing as well is that estates will have their own teams. So you'll be managing maintenance, repairs. If there's an in-hand farming business, you might be going to have a meeting with the farm manager, talking about what's the, how's the harvest going, how's lambing, calving going, what's the pressures that obviously as we all hear about in the press, and Clarkson does a brilliant job of showing the pressures on farming businesses. And it's I think quite often I like to think it's the web that makes up these rural estates and the communities as well. I think the day job is being out on the estates, talking to people and being the bridge from the landowner, property owners, to the tenants and to the local communities. So I think it's a really important bit about to get that theme coming through for communication and talking through that sort of thing. And also you have managing those teams and managing your days. So that's one of the amazing things about being an estate manager, as Henry kindly alluded to earlier, which is that loads of different things, like any surveyor, comes across to every day. It could be problem with how you motivate your team to hello, Mr. Estate Manager, we would like to put a great big solar farm all across the estate. Would you be interested? So I mean it's the brilliant thing. And then also you'll have property refurbishments going on. So whether there's a house, farm, or whatever it may be, you'll be managing those projects and talking to the tenants if they're leaving, so you can do these refurbishments, but also finding new ones. So once these projects are completed, you've got a fantastic farmhouse that you're ready to let, or pub or farm or whatever it is, you'll then need to find new people and do referencing and see if they would be a good fit. And I think that the final thing, obviously, which is what is always the more difficult conversation, is talking about rent collections and whether they go up or down. And that's where it comes really back to being an estate manager, is being that person in the community. So when you have those difficult conversations, you're really able to have a personal relationship that make them easier to have. So next slide, please. So here I just want to talk through, there's another real theme, is that being the Swiss Army knife in these roles, and the various different things you're going to have a day to day. So it's about finding the right tool for the right job, and that could be actually ringing up insurance because we've had a really big storm and the shed roof's blown off, or it could be Mr. Maintenance, could you, or whoever in your maintenance team, could you please go and speak to Mr. and Mrs. Smith because they need a new door handle fitting. It's anything and everything. So let's run through these real life problems here. So let's start at the top. Say there's a problem. You've got a farming tenant's roof is leaking just before lambing. And for lambing, for those guys who are not involved in agriculture, is the most important time of year. So you guys are about to do your exams. It's that real build up going really important. It'll be the most important part of their year. It'll be really dependent on it. So it's a bit like it's Christmas, there's no food, and the boiler's broken, so you're all trying to huddle together, trying to stay warm. And your job as the estate manager is to find the solution. So that's getting a contractor that will come out and fix it quickly, but also affordably. It's really important that you get the best outcome for the tenant who's got frankly, probably quite wet with all the rain on the sheep, and also do your best for the estate, which is trying to earn as affordably and in budget as you can. So moving on to the next problem, and I'm sure as you guys will see, if you're out walking in your countryside, you'll see beautiful old farm buildings dotted about the countryside because they're no longer needed. And in this instance, we'd like to turn it into a wedding venue, which, it could be anything. It could be, frankly, what do we do with this lovely building that we don't know what we should use it for? And your job as the estate manager is to check the planning restraints. As Clarkson brilliantly shows, if you have watched Clarkson's Farm, planning can be very difficult, and making sure you know what you can and can't do with those buildings is really important before you start anything else. And then it's about consulting the tenants. So it comes back to that and the wider community, and being the bridge from the estate to the community and to the tenants. And because obviously if you bring, often these rural estates are people who've lived there their whole lives, and they're a really big thing. And if they have big changes, that's a massive disruption in people's lives. So before you, as part of the idea, it's engagement with the community and with the tenants. And so if you do put a planning application in, or if you do take it further, you don't have the pitchforks at the gates, trying to knock down the gates of the house and all that sort of thing. And then finally, it's obviously evaluating the value. So not quite the valuation side of it, but also all the business and project management that you go behind setting up a new enterprise, whether you would like to run it in-house, and whether you would like to or lease it, and all that sort of thing. So there's a myriad of different things that go into that. I think it just come back to being that Swiss Army knife, finding the right tool for the right job. So next slide, please. So what skills do you need? And I hope you guys have seen these things coming through. So it's communication, I think, is one of the most important ones. You'll be out and about and be expected to be out and about. So if you are the person who in the lunch hall never shuts up and all your friends and the teachers are telling you to be quiet at the back of class, this is not a bad one for you, because it's really important to be out there talking to the tenants, talking to the contractors, and managing people and also your time. So that feeds quite nice in organisation. You need to be quite an organised person that's managing your time, other people's projects to make sure they hit the financial goals and they don't go over budget, and also tasks. Just coming back to, you have loads of things will come over your desk during the day, and actually being able to prioritise what's really important. So if you've got a mock exam, say, or you've got a shed roof that's blown off, that's really important. Or if you've got a minor issue, just being able to prioritise you and also your team's day is vital. And negotiation. So quite often when you go talk to your tenants, it might be to talk about the rent, and also whether that might go up or down, or it might be to contractors, because as we all know, if anyone has any experience with a contractor and they're doing not renovating a house, say, mistakes happen, and you have to have a difficult conversation, sometimes a frank one, about, you know, can you please fix that? Or for example, because it's not quite to the standard that you would like. So, and that's just a few examples. So it's constantly negotiating pretty much every day on various things. It could be very basic things like that, or it could be big things like the solar farm and putting together a lease for that, or it could be a wind turbines, or it could be even sort of salary negotiations with your estate team. And final one is resilience. So things do go wrong. And I'll give you a really prime example on this. There was a big storm in January, and I had there's a problem we just alluded to. Shed roof went flying, took out another shed next to it. Thankfully, no one was hurt. All of that sort of thing. Get a phone call on the Sunday night telling it's happened. Think, oh, fantastic. But mainly, obviously, nothing bad happened. And you go into Monday the next day, go into work, and it's about calling the insurers, picking up the phone to the contractors, getting it fixed, picking up the phone to the farming tenant so it's impacted, and just being prepared that things do go wrong, and that is okay. You know, it's very, very normal, and it's just being about keeping calm under pressure. So next slide, please. So I think that this will appeal to you guys if you like being outdoors. There's a really big thing about, you know, as we've all said about, it's about getting out, put your wellies on, put your boots on, out into the countryside. You like solving real life problems, and not every day being the same. You know, in any one day, I might have questions about refurbishments, to leases, to what are we going to do with these wonderful buildings, wedding venue, that sort of thing. And you don't need a rural background. You just need to be curious about the countryside and how it works. And I think also interested in how those really tight-knit, close communities work together. And I think that's me. So thank you very much all for listening. I'll now pass on to my colleague James, who's going to talk to you about farming, carbon and land use.
Great, thank you very much, Ed, and great to see you all here today. So my name is James Fuller. I'm Head of Rural Surveying and Estate Management for the National Trust, and I'm going to be talking to you about farming, carbon and land use. And I guess really the first question is, so what does rural surveying and estate management have to do with this? Well, I'm going to talk to you about 4 key themes around this, and the first to touch on is why it is important. And then I want to talk about the impacts that have been caused by humans, technology to help, and nature-based solutions. So firstly, why is it important? And I think you can see that there are a number of reasons here that we put up on the screen. But what we do on the land and how we treat it as an asset has a direct impact upon the environment's well-being and its ability to adapt and respond to things like climate change. So why is this important? Well, there are 7 reasons on this slide to consider, and good land management is vital to so many things that we take for granted today, but food being perhaps the most obvious one, but also possibly the most overlooked. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. So if I could have the next slide, please. So for many in the room, the question at the top of this slide has an obvious answer, but let's just look at that in a little bit more detail for a minute. In the UK, we consume just under 5 million tonnes of milling wheat, and that's otherwise known as bread flour. We produce domestically, i.e. here in the UK, about 3.5 million tonnes of that, and the shortfall we import from all over the world. You need about a hectare of land, that's a rugby pitch and a half, to grow enough wheat for 11,000 loaves of bread. And so this shows us how reliant and how at risk to volatility we are. So think about the war in Ukraine and what that did to food prices, to wheat prices, but also to energy prices as well. And how important the UK is as a farming sector to national security, let alone to food security, and how important innovation is going to be, and how we can leave artificial intelligence to make our food more sustainable. And this map here shows areas of the globe traffic light coded to represent food security. And we are lucky in the UK to live in a green zone, but we cannot take that for granted. And climate change and other factors are starting to have a huge impact on this, as we're going to see in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So what then are some of the biggest risks to food security, and how can land management and how can we as experts in this field help to meet those challenges? Well, climate change has to be one of the biggest. It's inevitable, but farming and farmers have always been adaptable, and with good land management practices, the impact of climate change can be reduced. We can work with farmers, growers and land managers to improve the inherent fertility of our soils, to reduce reliance on synthetics. This increases soil carbon, i.e. it sequesters carbon into the soil. It creates resilient soils which are less at risk of erosion and flooding. And these might seem like marginal gains, but when put together, they do have a really meaningful impact. These slides here show how soil erosion predictions between 2016 and 2050 are projected to play out. And as you can see, mainland Europe is at significant risk. And I think this satellite picture really puts that in focus. If you look at the Severn Estuary, which is just to the west of Bristol, you can see what we call literally natural capital and natural food growing resources just washing away. And we have a real opportunity to try and do something about that in our industries. So next slide, please. So farming is only a fairly small part of the UK's total carbon emissions, but it has a huge role to play in helping to reduce this. It's important not only for the atmosphere, but also for food production. More carbon-rich soils tend to have greater productive capacity. And by introducing some simple land management changes, these intensively farmed areas on the right here can start to recover. And this is where good professional advice is essential. And that's what we do in our industry. And it's exciting because you can really see the benefits of the impact that you're having in your work. Next slide, please. So we've talked a lot about the threats facing our farming sector, but there are solutions. And these two pictures for me show how innovation can make sustainable, intensive food production possible. And that's sustainable from a farming business perspective, sustainable from a consumer perspective, and also sustainable from an environmental one as well. Using AI-powered cameras and an intelligent sprayer boom, these growers can identify weeds and pests from crops and apply point-specific chemicals. This means that they're reducing usage, they're reducing costs for the grower, and reducing harm for the environment. And again, on the right, using AI cameras, we can in real time automatically assess the crop's need for expensive fertilizer and apply a calculated and targeted dose. And again, this has the impact of reducing cost, reducing harm, and reducing consumption. So next slide, please. So this is a video I'm about to show you, which is really demonstrating how technology can help to reduce costs and make farming financially sustainable as well as climate change. This is about a minute and a half or so. This has been taken from the Dyson farming business website. So it's a short video for a minute and a half, and then we'll move on. So thank you. technology, and they're reducing waste and generating energy to help recycle that back into the production of strawberries. So it's just one example of how technology. So next slide. So not everybody can do Dyson farming, of course they can't, but how can natural processes be used to encourage the same? Well, what is regenerative farming? Essentially, it's an approach to agriculture that focuses on restoring and enhancing the health of soil. So that's fertility and water retention, improves biodiversity in the ecosystem, services that go with it, and sequestering carbon, but whilst critically also producing food, because as a nation we need to eat. And this is unlike conventional farming, which can in some cases degrade soil over time. Regenerative practices aim to restore soil fertility. And yes, of course, it produces less food than conventional methods. But the key here is that it is more sustainable. But I guess the question is, does it make money for the farming enterprise? So next slide, please. Well, as I've said, this may not be for everyone and it may not work everywhere, but there are some parts of the country where this can have a real positive impact, and we've seen that in a number of different places. So by blending the income streams from points 1 to 6, land managers can help create thriving businesses which produce food and provide a host of environmental benefits. And that's the work that I and others on this panel here today are doing to help generate an income and help pay for the contribution that farming and land management change can help make for society. So next slide, please. So this has been a very quick look at land management and its role in food, farming, carbon and environmental practices. And in my career, I don't think there's been a more exciting time to be in this industry. And I believe that our role is absolutely critical in helping us to meet these challenges head on. And we do that by designing sustainable systems for land management. We work with clients, we work with landowners, we work with farmers to access and deploy technology. And we work to secure soil carbon hand in hand with food production. And I've got a video just coming up now that shows how, as advisors and professionals, we are working with the land and natural processes to help mitigate the impacts of climate change on a National Trust property in North Somerset. Thank you.
The Hunnicutt Estate is 12,500 acres of National Trust owned land in West Somerset, Exmoor National Park. This includes upland heathland and oakwood with steep wooded valleys, peatlands and heath. The Hornet and the Aller catchments are extremely flashy, they're very dynamic, and so a key part of the project has been developing resilience to more extreme weather events. The Vale in the Salt Marshes is very different, with lots of farmland, the River Aller running through the middle of it, down through to the Salt Marsh and the Bristol Channel. The North Hill and Hurlstone Point that overlooks the Vale, the Salt Marsh and along the Exmoor coast. For over 7 years now, the National Trust has been working at catchment scale, working with natural processes to deliver a much more resilient landscape for local wildlife and local communities. This has involved work in the uplands, restoring peat. I work with and through the South West Peat Partnership. This is storing huge amounts of water and helping to restore much needed peatland, which absorbs and sequesters carbon and provides unique habitat for local wildlife. We've worked with tenant farmers on innovative GPS grazing schemes using the native breed cattle to develop rich mosaics of upland and lowland habitat. We've planted hundreds of thousands of trees and kilometres of hedgerows. We've also changed land management across large areas of the state to encourage natural regeneration of scrub and woodland, which is super valuable for wildlife. Keystone species like water vole and beaver have been released on the estate, Beavers create amazingly vibrant and abundant wetland ecosystems, and we are applying to Natural England for a licence to release these animals out into the wider landscape. The local community have been involved throughout the process and are overwhelmingly supportive. A key part of the project was our Stage Zero scheme on the River Aller. This reconnected over 1.2 kilometres of Main River with its floodplain, and the results were incredible. There's been a huge uptick in bioabundance and diversity, and the data suggests that we've significantly reduced the flood peak and increased the lag time throughout the river catchment. The project is a real validation of the way that we're approaching the management of our river systems on the Hunnicutt estate. Overall, this project is a great example of how the National Trust is committed to working with partners to deliver for people, for climate and for nature.
So this is just a couple of final slides for me, really, just to show how land is used in the UK. So you can see the allocation of land there. And one of the challenges for us in this profession is, what do we want to use land for? What does society need land for? Does it need it for access, for recreation, for nature, for food production, for housing, for energy, for employment? And I suspect the reality is we need it for all of those things. And despite probably what some people think, actually the amount of land in the UK that is built on isn't that great in percentage terms. So I just thought that was an interesting slide to share with you. So next slide, please. So by way of closing, really, I think this is an absolutely fabulous industry to be in. I've been fortunate to work in this for 28 years or so since I left college. But it would be great if you love being outdoors, having a connection with nature. You prefer to be a bit hands-on rather than being in an office all day, but there is, of course, a balance where you need to be able to do both. And you enjoy knowing a little bit more about sciences, biology and chemistry. So thank you very much. I think that concludes my section, and I am now going to be handing on to Caris and Alice, who are going to talk to you about valuation.
Thank you, James. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the presentation so far. I am Caris Pickavans and I work for Carter Jonas in Oxford. Just to give you a bit of background about what Carter Jonas do, they are a UK property consultancy and estate agency founded in 1855, and we cover commercial, residential, rural, planning and development and infrastructure work. And we have about 1,000 people working across 34 different offices. I have worked for Carter Jonas for 6 years, of which most of my time has been spent working on infrastructure projects, predominantly transport projects dealing with the world of negotiation and compulsory purchase. However, as of this year, I have made the change to focus on rural valuation work. Hopefully, today's suite of presentations shows you how varied our roles are and the ability to change throughout your career.
So, good morning, everyone. I am Alice Nicholson and I work for Carter Jonas down in the southwest in our Taunton office. So a bit of background on me. So after finishing sixth form, I initially did an undergraduate degree in environmental science before joining Carter Jonas in 2022. Since then, I've been doing a master's degree apprenticeship in real estate and I qualified as a chartered surveyor earlier this year. Both Caris and I work in valuation and compulsory purchase, and today we're excited to give you a behind the scenes look at what we do, how you can get involved, and why valuation is such a vital role in the property profession.
Next slide, please. So, as Alice mentioned, we are both registered valuers. So what does this mean? To become a registered valuer, you firstly have to become a chartered member of the RICS. You can do this by meeting one of their eligibility requirements before applying for assessment. This is either having relevant experience and an RICS accredited degree, or 5 years of relevant experience and any bachelor's degree, or 10 years of related experience operating at an advanced level by seniority, specialism or academia. If you are considering whether to go to university, and this sounds like the career for you, make sure you consider if the degree is RICS accredited. There are some options to do RICS accredited degrees as full-time undergraduates or via an apprenticeship route over a 5-year period, or even, as Alice mentioned on her route, a master's degree. Once you have completed your degree, you will need the relevant time requirements of competency-based experience, particularly if you want to become a valuer. And this really depends on which option that you take into this route. If you're working towards your APC with the RICS, you'll need to select valuation as a competency and take it to level 3 to become a registered valuer. Then once you are qualified, sign up to the RICS's Registered Valuer scheme.
So what does a registered valuer actually mean? So being a registered valuer means that we meet specific professional standards and qualifications to carry out property valuations. Essentially, this is a form of professional recognition. So we're officially recognised by the RICS to provide property valuations. Also standards and ethics, so we have to follow strict ethical guidelines and valuation standards, making sure our valuations are accurate, transparent and trustworthy. And we also commit to continued learning, so we commit to ongoing development, so we stay on top of market changes and regulations, for example. So being an RICS registered valuer gives clients, lenders and everyone involved confidence that our work is reliable and also, of course, ethical. Valuations are needed for a wide range of purposes, which I'm sure some of you are aware of, but I'll run through them quickly. So we've got secured lending, so banks need to know what a property is worth before lending against it. Financial reporting, so some companies must report the value of their assets. Taxation, which is very topical at the moment for things like inheritance tax or capital gains. Compulsory purchase, which we will touch back on later. Agency, so buying and selling, and expert witness, which provides expert advice on legal disputes.
Each purpose has different requirements, and understanding the context is key for delivering a valuation for our clients. Before we even start crunching numbers, we have to carry out due diligence. That means inspecting the property. This is the great part about our role, because we're not just desk-based all the time. We get to go out and have a look at people's properties. So that's usually one of the steps of our due diligence. We review legal documents, we understand planning constraints and permissions, and check for any environmental issues.
And most importantly for our job, a thorough inspection is essential. We look at condition, layout, access, and anything else that may affect the property's overall value. And actually, when it comes to being back in the office and valuing the property, we'll use a variety of different methods depending very much on the property type. These usually fall into the market approach, which compares the subject property to similar properties that have sold. The cost approach, which calculates the value based on the cost to rebuild the property from scratch, which is usually used for property where there is market scarce evidence. And also the income approach, which values properties based on the income it generates, which is very commonly used for commercial properties.
Choosing the right method, or even a combination, is part of the art of being a valuer. No 2 days are the same. To provide a bit of a flavour of the past couple of weeks and weeks ahead, I've inspected properties which range from 50 acres to 4,000 acres. To put into context, that's approximately 2,000 UK football pitches. We attend networking events, whether they are hosted by the CAAV or even our clients. One day we're in the office writing reports, and the next we have our wellies on inspecting agricultural land or equine facilities or large manor houses, but we usually take our wellies off for that part.
The next, we're out on farm inspecting commercial buildings or viewing residential properties. In my opinion, it's a great mix of desk work and also field work, especially when you're out on farm with your wellies on. So,
next slide, please.
Yeah, next slide, please. So we thought we would have a little bit of fun and mix up a little bit. So there's a property here in front of you. If I just run through what it is. So this was Coastal Cabins, which was a detached 2 to 3 bedroom lodge with sea views. It was very much a leisure property, had tennis courts, barbecue hut, hot tub, a lake with an island, and 10 detached glamping cabins, and it was set in about 5 acres. If you'd like to put in the questions box how much the property you think perhaps sold for, whether it was perhaps less than £1 million, more than £1 million, or less than 500,000, that sort of thing. I'll give you a minute.
Right.
Have we got any responses?
2.8 million,
Oh, wow.
1.2 million.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think somebody needs to be a Euro Millions winner here for these. More than £1 million, and more than £1 million again. Let's see if there's anything. 1.85 million.
So as a consensus, we're thinking possibly more than £1 million. Well, unfortunately, this one here sold for 825,000. So a little bit off the mark, perhaps because we're down in Devon where values tend to be a little bit lower. And then if we go on to the next slide, please, we've got another property. So this one here is South Godstone Animal Centre. It was in Surrey. It was a well-located animal centre with a really nice detached house, another property, land of about 10 acres. If I let you sort of have a little look at what you think this one might be worth.
Oh, here we go. 1.9 million.
Okay.
1.25.
Yeah.
2.85.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting closer.
Oh, there we go. 2.5.
Oh, we're quite close. So this one here actually sold for 2.25 million. So some of the guesses were quite accurate. And then onto the third property, the last property, if we'd go on to the next slide, please. So we've got Manor Farm here in Oxfordshire. It was a ring-fenced arable farm with farmhouses and buildings extending to about 388 acres, and it was located to the northeast of Oxford. This one actually does tell you the guide price, which helps you out. So it was guided at 4.85 million. If anybody has any suggestions for this one.
We've got 4.2 million.
Okay.
Which I think might have come in just before you said the guide price.
Ahead of the game.
Yeah, 5 million.
5.2. Amazing. So this one here actually sold for 5.25 million. So the last guess was pretty accurate. Fabulous. If I hand back to Caris.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So as mentioned at the start, I completed 5 years working on infrastructures projects before focusing solely on valuation work, including one of the biggest schemes in the UK, HS2. But valuation is really a key part of this work. It's also a detailed understanding of compulsory purchase and how it works. So what actually is compulsory purchase? It's when public bodies can acquire land if the public benefit outweighs the private loss. There is a rigorous process before compulsory purchase powers are granted, such as evidencing if the project is really required and if there are any undertakings or assurances that the acquiring authority must complete and demonstrate that the acquiring authority has seen to negotiate. It's used for things like transport, housing, and energy infrastructure. Compulsory purchase can also be used for regeneration projects. So an example of a project we've been involved in, which falls into this category, were the new cycle paths that were created in Birmingham when the 2022 Commonwealth Games were hosted to make it more accessible for all the members coming to watch the Commonwealth Games. These projects often transform underused or derelict areas into vibrant communities, but they require careful valuation and negotiation. Next slide, please.
Perfect. So this is where valuation meets law, infrastructure, and negotiation. You need to understand the valuation principles, the legislation around CPOs, and the practical implications for landowners and acquiring authorities.
Thank you. It's a fascinating area that combines technical skill with real-world impact, and we hope we inspired you to explore it further today. The next presentation is on rural business and diversification, and this is presented by Jack Birchmore. I'll hand over to Jack now.
Thank you, Karis and Alice. Good morning, all. So last but not least, we do have the rural business and diversification. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that there has been diversification mentioned throughout a number of the previous slides in ways that our clients in the rural sector are looking to create more income other than just farming. So diversification is something that we come across every day as a rural surveyor, with our clients always wanting to make that extra penny here and there. And it's what makes the roles so interesting. It allows you to use your imagination and think of different ways that your clients might be able to increase their revenue by doing something different. And through the next few slides, I want you to use your imagination and think of what other ways are there to maybe create further income outside of farming on a rural property. Next slide, please. So diversification is the process of expanding the range of or variety of products, activities, or investments to reduce risk and increase opportunities for growth and income. Rural diversification is important to ensure the income streams are more resilient to changes in agricultural markets. There are many ways that farming enterprises can diversify, such as introducing livestock to an arable farm or converting old buildings into holiday lets. As you can see from the NFU survey, many farms are following the same trends when it comes to diversification. For example, renewables, so that's solar panels or wind turbines, they are the most popular diversification at the moment, right down to your pumpkin patches, which I'm sure lots of you will be visiting in the next few weeks. I want you to use your imagination and just have a think of what other ideas you think might suit a farm whilst other than farming. I don't know if you want to drop that into the comments box, Sam, if we get any ideas coming through.
Just having a look now. Okay, storage space we have.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, storage space.
So storage space, there's lots of different ways.
Farm
that could
tours.
be old buildings. Yes, farm tours. Going back to storage, that could be containers, yards, that could be open storage, that could be an old farm building that isn't being used anymore. And then looking at farm tours, opening up to the public and providing maybe not just farm tours, but also your other enterprises such as your pumpkin patches or maize walks, etc. And so on the next slide, please. And so our job as the surveyor is to ensure that our clients are making sensible decisions when diversifying their business by offering sound advice. This could be looking at cash flows, ensuring planning permission can be obtained, or looking into any licenses that may be required and whether the change will work alongside the main agricultural enterprise. And this is where you have to step back and ensure that the diversification is suitable. And for example, will the barn in the middle of the farmyard surrounded by machinery and cows be suitable to open up as a farm shop? Or is the pumpkin patch in a sensible location on the farm? Is it in the wettest corner or is it on the best bit of arable land on the farm? These things you have to consider, and it's what we as agents have to help our clients come to clever decisions when they're thinking of making these changes. Next slide, please. So as Ed has touched on previously, mentioning Clarkson's Farm, I'm sure lots of you have watched it and have got where he does show lots of examples of diversification. Obviously, Cheerful Charlie playing the role of the rural surveyor in that, and he is there to help Jeremy when he comes up with these sometimes wonderful ideas of ways to make money, but sometimes trying to keep him on the straight and narrow, and are they the most sensible ideas? Here we have a question and relating to Jeremy's diversification, and it'd be good if you could just drop in which one you think he ran into the most trouble with.
Problems did Jeremy Clarkson run into when he tried to open a farm restaurant? So the options are: there was no demand for it, limited stock available, he needed permission from the council, or he just didn't have enough forks. So what have we got here? We have lots of people saying C, so he needed permission from the council. Yeah, I think no one's falling for the not enough forks thing there.
Well, that's good. Although it might be a funny option, he didn't have enough forks. That wasn't a problem that he ran into, but again, it is something that has to be considered when you're opening these ventures. All the little details definitely have to be considered. So next slide, please. So Clarkson's Farm has highlighted the difficulties the agricultural industry faces day to day, and this is why we are here to help. As shown today, diversification allows you to use your imagination whilst also giving you the opportunity to look at different types of, to carry out the different types of work, from planning to valuation, business and tax advice. They all come back to the thought of the diversification that your client might wish to do. Raising awareness around using the farm's assets, such as its land, building or machinery, to develop a new business activity beyond farming. This venture usually sets out to provide additional income and complement the agricultural activity, or over time replace it. Next slide, please. So if you have a very imaginative imagination and you have lots of ideas, diversification is definitely something that would interest you. It gives you an opportunity to use that imagination and come up with different ideas and see if your clients would be happy to exercise any of them. You want to be entrepreneurial, have a good business mindset on you, and always think outside the box as to what else can be achieved on your property, on your client's property. Brilliant. I think we now have a break.
Hi everyone. So hopefully you have had a little bit of a break and have enjoyed all of the amazing content that you've heard so far this morning. So I suppose in terms of, from my perspective, I work in a talent team, so working very much around recruiting, so recruiting the next generation of talent into the rural profession. So I know firsthand, and I know some of my colleagues do on the call, you know, the skill shortages that we're facing, and you know how amazing this career can be, and the amazing feedback we get from our talent around the business. So we're really trying to send that message as far and wide as possible to encourage more of you know, your bright minds into our industry. So I suppose now you've heard all of the different areas and the different elements of the career and what you might want to choose. The question begs, how do I get into a career in rural? So I'm going to walk through that with you now. If you could just go to the next slide, please. So when we think about subjects, I'm sure there's a lot of you that are thinking about your subjects, which subjects you really enjoy, and actually how your learning and your studying can be directly transferable into what you do next. So just to go through a few of these with you now and give you that sort of example. If you're, for example, looking at geography, if you enjoy geography, you probably have an interest in the land and in the planet. And clearly that's very transferable to this career pathway. If you're, and as you probably all are, doing maths, or you really enjoy maths, then an interest in numbers, in finance, in problem solving, really key skills, really keyly transferable to this industry. Likewise with IT, you know, perhaps something that you wouldn't necessarily automatically think about when you think about agriculture or rural careers, but actually, if you enjoy technology and software and perhaps finding quicker ways to do something or deliver something, that is key to a career in rural, as you've seen by many of the examples about the amazing ways that we're using technology and AI in this sector. Perhaps you're thinking about law. Law's a really interesting one. You know, that looks at the concept of getting to fair outcomes using legislation and processes. Really key to most of the work that we do across surveying in the rural profession. Perhaps you're more creative. You perhaps like, I don't know, design technology is a good example. You like to be innovative. You like to create solutions. Again, really transferable skills. English is a great one. If you're good with language, good with words, you like talking to people. You know, it's a bit of a recurring theme around kind of interaction and negotiation. That's really key for this industry as well. So just giving you some examples of where perhaps you're honing in on subjects that you enjoy and how they can actually really set you up for success and be transferable. So next slide, please. If we move on to interests and hobbies, this is really key because what you often find is you start out in a career and perhaps it isn't the right thing for you, you know, and you end up kind of pivoting and you do something different. And quite a lot of the time, if you're working in a job that actually aligns with what you enjoy outside of work and outside of studying, it's likely to be a better career for you for the longer term. So it's really important to think about, you know, what do you enjoy? You know, if you like being outdoors, we've talked a lot about that today. If you like walking, hiking, being in the countryside, you know, that would be really great in terms of the synergy with this career path. Likewise, if you enjoy gaming, you know, if you enjoy sort of technology and simulations and looking at kind of ways that you can get to solutions through using tech, you know, that is also, you know, again, can align with what we're doing when we're using drones and we're kind of capturing data in the field. If you enjoy that kind of tech, you know, using those kind of controls and things, that would be really transferable as well. Sport is a huge one, you know, being competitive, being kind of active, working in a team, working with people, you know, that's hugely transferable to this line of work. So, you know, if you're enjoying kind of your sporting, different sports and you like to work with people and you like to kind of be competitive towards a goal, that's also really relevant. And perhaps you're less active. Maybe you just like, you know, board games or, you know, watching game shows on telly, something like that. Again, you know, it is still problem solving. It's still kind of reaching an end goal and being creative. So all of these things, you know, really I would encourage you to have a think about what do you really enjoy and how can you channel that into your work and your career decisions about what you might do next. Next slide, please. So there are two sort of primary pathways outside of experience into a rural career. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple of those now and give you some examples. So the first one is an apprenticeship. You know, perhaps you're somebody who is quite hands-on. You know, if you consider yourself quite a hands-on person, perhaps you're less academic, and actually you've got a bit of a bug to sort of start working and getting into the real world. If that sounds like you, then an apprenticeship is a really good way of balancing earning and getting into the world of work, but also achieving a degree at the same time, achieving those qualifications. This is a really great option for those people who perhaps really have that bug to start working, but you know, equally want to become chartered and to achieve a professional qualification. Likewise, if you are looking for a career change, an apprenticeship could be a really great way to pivot, you know, your existing skills and experience into a new field. So usually, as I think it was referenced earlier, usually an apprenticeship is a 5-year program. And normally as an entry point, you'd go from being a school or college leaver straight into an apprenticeship. And what you'll do is you'll work possibly a day a week or a week of a month on site at a university, gaining your qualification. And the rest of the time you'd be working actually at a job, you know, in the work environment, putting all of those skills into practice at the same time. So the best bit about an apprenticeship is your course fees, so your university fees or equivalent, are covered by your employer through the apprenticeship levy, through the government. So what that means is ordinarily when you go to university, you take on student debt, you take on a student loan and you have to pay your tuition fees. If you choose an apprenticeship route, you don't have any student debt. So it's a really, really upcoming angle, and a lot of people have previously thought about apprenticeships as only those which are related to more manual trades, and the perception of apprenticeships is really changing. And actually, there's a real kind of misconception that you can't do a degree, that an apprenticeship is not parable to achieving a degree. But really, you know, the degree apprenticeship pathway into the rural career, you achieve a degree as well as earning and working in a job. So it's just really important that you all understand that by choosing the apprenticeship route, you can still achieve a university degree. That is really important. In terms of entry requirements, so for an apprenticeship, you're thinking about how you get into those. Typically, it would be a minimum of 5 GCSEs, including your maths and English, or equivalent to that. So that would be your typical kind of entry point for an apprenticeship. And an example of an apprenticeship, one of the universities that have been supporting this Route to Rural campaign is Harper Adams University. So I'm just going to use their programme as an example to give you a feeling of what this looks like. So their Rural Chartered Surveyor Apprenticeship, you study part-time at Harper Adams University, and you would go in a week-long block. So you'd go to university, study for a week, and then you'd come back to your job and you would do the remaining 3 weeks of that month at work. So this enables you to balance that academic learning, but also with working and practical experience. And in most of the apprenticeships which support our sector, you would gain a respected degree. You would eventually then become chartered through the RICS or similar. You would have mentorship from experienced professionals in the workplace. You would earn a competitive salary throughout your apprenticeship. And most importantly, you will be in a career that really is creating that meaningful difference. So that is one of the options to you in terms of getting into this career. Secondly, we do, of course, have the graduate option. So you maybe are, you're really keen to go to university, and perhaps you're excited about the prospect about living away from home, moving out, getting away and meeting friends and living with those people, sort of having new experiences. The university experience is really set up for that, and some people really want to experience that feeling of moving away and going to university. And as a graduate, you enter the working world with a real ability to jump into real world projects, and you perhaps need less hand-holding. You've got that degree behind you, and you've probably honed kind of presentation skills and other soft skills throughout your degree. So you can really get involved once you hit the workplace and blend both sort of your technical skills with your soft skills. So what's in it for you if you do a graduate program? Well, you get more than just training. You get coaching and mentorship from some of the best kind of people in the industry, both the academics, but also people when you reach your kind of first graduate role. You make really valuable connections with your peers and with lecturers. And I think, the more well-connected you are, the more likely you are to find routes into careers, find work experience, and really sort of leverage those contacts. You'll be supported with dedicated supervisors and mentors throughout your route to chartership. You'll probably experience sort of dedicated training days and opportunities to really work with those key people to develop your skills and have access to continued professional development. You will have sort of some study leave and kind of case study support through your employer. And on average, it will take you about 24 months from achieving a RICS accredited degree to then becoming chartered through the RICS. So they're the main kind of options we have. In terms of entry requirements, again, for the degrees that we're talking about here, it would be the minimum of the 5 GCSEs, similar to the apprenticeship, and then also a minimum of 104 UCAS points tends to be the standard, which is about 3 A-levels or equivalent. So I would encourage you all, if you're looking into either option, apprenticeship or a university degree, to familiarise yourself with what the entry requirements are, so you've got a real goal to work towards for the rest of your studies. Of course, there are both undergraduate and postgraduate options. So undergraduate is really suitable for those people who are sort of new to careers. So they're coming out of sort of doing A-levels, and they're looking towards going into an undergraduate degree. But there's also a postgraduate option, which can be quite good for people who maybe have a degree already, but really want to pivot or specialise in something. at the end of the day, lots of people will kind of find their feet in something and decide, I want to try something different. I want to do something new. So the postgraduate option is for those that typically maybe have a degree already and are looking to top that up as a postgraduate at master's level, which is usually about a year versus the 3 years in duration for a normal entry-level undergrad degree at university. Example degrees to kind of keep an eye out for across agriculture, business management and land and property would mainly be real estate, rural land and property management, agricultural business management, or any other agricultural based degree. So do keep an eye out for those kind of buzzwords when you're looking at both apprenticeships or university degrees via UCAS or any other channels that you're exploring. So hopefully that's given you a little bit more clarity on what your options are and how to find out about getting into this career and what those pathways look like. One of our apprentices will be joining us for the Q&A later. So if any of you have any questions about doing an apprenticeship or a degree, please do fire them into the question box. I think that's all from me. I think I'm handing over next slide. Oh, sorry, it's not all from me. I just want to talk through the employers and the universities. So the universities, these are the key universities that support the rural courses. So when you're looking and considering where do I go and which of these providers offer either an apprenticeship or a degree, then please do familiarise yourself with these providers, because all of these providers supply courses, both degrees and apprenticeships that support the rural career. And I think there may be a few videos now before we move on to give you an example of some of the individuals who have gone through a sort of similar experience, whether it's a relevant degree or an apprenticeship, and what they get up to on a day-to-day basis. So I think those are going to play next.
My name is Hannah Henschel and I work for BTF Partnership in Kent. I've been an agricultural valuer for 4 years now. My route into agricultural valuing wasn't exactly conventional, as I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do when I left school. All I really knew was I didn't want to go to a big city university. Whilst I was researching universities, I came across the Royal Agricultural University and found land management in their prospectus, and it really sounded interesting to me. So I attended the open day and learnt more about it, and it went from there really. Once we finish full-time education, we will join a firm who will train us towards our RICS APC, which is usually a 24-month training programme, and we will also usually get the CAV qualification as well, which we can do at any time, usually in the first or second year. My role is primarily rural estate management, but I also do valuations and quite a bit of planning work as well in a rural context. A typical working week would probably include an estate visit or two, meeting with tenants, undertaking inspections, potentially visiting a client for a planning matter, and then the rest of the week might be in the office. So there's a really nice variety of not being stuck at your desk all the time. Working in this sector is really important because we need to ensure clients are optimising their land use for the best possible outcomes, whether that's environmental or food security, and ensuring a balance between the two. If someone was considering entering the industry, I would highly recommend they go and speak to a local agent, because it's no secret that there's a shortage of people who do what we do, and they would all be delighted to help, whether it's offering work experience or advice as to how to enter the industry.
My name's Charlotte Pearson-Wood. I am a chartered surveyor, also known as a land agent in the rural sector, and I'm a partner at Batchelor Monk House. I've been working in the industry for approximately 14 years now. My role is really varied. My team look after and manage approximately 5 estates, but we also do an awful lot of private client work as well. And this can go from helping a farmer apply for a stewardship scheme, doing valuations for banks, everything really. It's really varied. So anything to do with rural property we will help with. My typical working week as a chartered surveyor is really varied. varied, and that's why I love the job. I'm out of the office a lot of the time. I'm not someone that finds sitting still very easy. So I would typically be on an estate meeting an owner, or out with a farmer to do a farm inspection or a stewardship application, or I could even be in London in a big trustees meeting with some very high-powered people. So yeah, really varied week, which is why I enjoy it. I use an awful lot of maths in my role because I'm helping estates and farms plan and budget. So financial budgeting is really important in my role, as well as analysing the accounts to look at performance. As well, with the maths, we do an awful lot of valuations, whether that's stock taking valuations, valuing livestock and grain in store, or property valuations, and they vary from a bare field to a full estate and farm, which can be quite complicated. I really enjoy my role because I'm meeting an awful lot of people. I really enjoy making a difference to people's businesses and understanding what is important to each individual person. I think the agricultural industry is really important to work in. We act as effectively trusted advisors to everyone involved in agriculture, right from your tenant farmers, your landowner occupiers, through to your estate owners. All of those people play a key role in producing food, but also delivering environmental outcomes across up and down the country. For anyone considering this as a career, I can only say it's a really happy career. I've never had a bad experience in any office I've worked in. It's a really varied role, as I touched on before, and I think for anyone with a love of the countryside and wanting to help people with their businesses, it's a really exciting role to be in. It's ever changing as well, so my job 14 years ago is nowhere near what I'm doing now, so you can specialise so much within the role, which is really good.
Brilliant. So hopefully that really gives you guys a bit of an understanding of kind of bringing it all to life a little bit, people that are actually, you know, walking in those shoes and who are doing the job. So hopefully that kind of helped to just bring all of our kind of slides and conversation to life for you. So I'm now going to hand over to Claire from Stratton Parker, who's going to go through more about CVs and interviewing. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, Jo, and thanks so much for letting me be part of today's session. We've heard from all the brilliant speakers about what the career looks like. So now the big question is, how do I bring all my brilliance onto a one-page CV? Next slide, please. So I've consolidated here a list of a few writing tips for your CV. So I'm just going to go one by one and talk in a bit more detail about best practice and top tips for each section. If you have got a pen and paper with you, it'd be really useful so you can just jot down a few extra notes for each part. I'm sure at this stage you've all seen or may even have a CV. So a lot of this detail is quite obvious. So first, having that personal detail. But it is really important that you've got on there your address, so it gives the recruiters some sort of idea of what locations you're looking at, as well as your contact details and even a link to your LinkedIn as well. In your profile section, this is a couple of sentences just summarising who you are, what experience you've got, and what sort of opportunities that you're looking for. Often people skip this section out, thinking that the recruiter has all that information on the 2 pages of the CV. Why do I need to summarise it? But there's some interesting stats out there that an average recruiter spends about 15 seconds looking at a CV, trying to gather that information. So having it all captured in the profile is a great way to summarise it all and really let the recruiter know who you are. A big part of this is that what do you hope to achieve? So if you are looking at applying for apprenticeship routes, then make it really clear here you're ambitious to become a rural surveyor and looking to study alongside on the MProf apprenticeship, for example, with Harper Adams. So really making it clear to the recruiter, yeah, this person is really looking for this opportunity. Next is your education. I often see people hesitate on putting all their subjects or all the grades, particularly if they don't feel that they've done too well. I think what's really important is, yeah, to share all the information there. Don't hide away from it, because otherwise you'll just get asked for it in an interview and it might take you off guard a bit. But an important thing about this career and career as a surveyor is, as much as academics are important and hold weight to anything, and it's good to pursue that, the skills and the attributes, building relationships, being analytical, and being a problem solver, are what sees people thrive in the career. So on the education part, be honest, include all your list of your schools, and then the next part is including your skills, and that's where you can really bring to life that building relationships. So if any of you have got any part-time jobs, maybe as a waiter or a glass collector, that just also shows that ability to work and have work ethic. But communication, leadership from any sports or societies or clubs that you've been part of, it's really important to be able to include all that. Any attributes as well that you receive from school, being head boy, head girl, include all that in your skills section. Then experience, both paid or unpaid. Appreciate a few of you may not yet actually be in the position to take any paid experience, but you may have experience in the lambing season, for example, or experience doing unpaid work experience as part of school. So make sure you include all that along with any volunteering work, and a short bullet point just explaining a bit of detail, but also don't worry about going too granular into what you did for each of the roles. Quite often the job title itself shares that. So for example, if you are a glass collector, you don't need to go into too much detail about what you're doing as described in the job title. And next, and a huge bit that people again often skip off, is the interests and achievements. So this is who you are beyond the person that goes to school or the person that goes to work experience, and it gives a great opportunity for the recruiter to see and understand a bit about your skills beyond what you've shared in the skills section. So for example, keeping it all in line with agriculture and farming in the interest area, you assume if you're going for a role within a rural surveyor position, you've got that interest in farming or agriculture. So make sure you include a section on that and just list the things that you've been involved with. So that could be young farmers, or it could be attending today's session, supporting with lambing season. Get it all included in that area. And again, it just really demonstrates to that recruiter, yes, this is the exact person that is going to thrive in a career like a rural surveyor. And then finally is your references. So particularly if you're junior and you're coming into your first positions, I definitely suggest trying to get some sort of reference, be it from a teacher, and asking them to do a short couple of sentences to speak to your character and your skills and your potential. Another contact that you could ask for this is if you are fortunate to get any work experience, or again, if you've had any experience with any local farm, or you've just helped with mucking out, for example, with horses at a local farm, get a reference from them, and it just further kind of all paints the picture of someone that's willing and looking forward to pursuing their career as a rural surveyor. Next slide, please. So once we've got the CV out the way and you're fortunate enough to get to interview, next you have that awful question where you suddenly get asked questions like, tell me about the special skills you have, and you may panic a bit. So next slide is on some interview tips. Perfect. So my first bit of advice on this area, I'll list all these, is but use the network that you've got around you. So if you're at school, if you're at college, if you may be a career changer later down the line, reach out to people either in the industry or just peers and like networks within your school, so a careers advisor, to be able to practice and rehearse what a good interview looks like. So number one is practice an interview. Now, I will hesitate to advise using ChatGPT or any AI software for any other parts of the process. Your CV should be about you and you bringing yourself to life. But one of the great assets of an AI tool is being able to suggest some questions that you may get. So that is a great opportunity to be able to ask ChatGPT, I've got this interview for this role. These are the sorts of skills they want. Can you list me a few questions that they may ask me? Practice those questions, do them with a family member, friend, ask them for feedback, or if you're too shy to do that, you can also record yourself answering the question, just so you can give yourself some personal feedback. Be punctual, it goes without saying, but leave that extra 30 minutes earlier. Walk around the block a bit before you go in, feel relaxed, ease yourself, because there's nothing worse than running late for something important like an interview, or the impression that that can leave to the people interviewing you. Next is the follow-up. So just a short message. Thank you so much for your time today. Really great to speak to you. If there's a certain thing that stood out to you, then you can reference that, be it maybe the project that they worked on and you enjoyed asking them about that. Research. Know what company you're going in for, know what role you are. This applies as well for video interviews. As someone who's watched thousands of video interviews in my early careers, kind of recruitment career, it is quite surprising the number of people that don't just take 20 minutes beforehand, have a look on the LinkedIn, have a look on the website. What have the company been recently shouting about? What are they proud of? What reports have they released? Familiarise yourself with this information, so you can really impress when you get that question of what do you know about the company. Stay calm. Now, it is so normal to be nervous, and it's difficult, particularly as you're mastering and honing in on your experience with interviewing, to remain calm. But just take deep breaths. Have a look online. If you do ask someone that does get particularly nervous or maybe suffers with anxiety, there's so much resource out there online to be able to just center yourself and keep yourself calm so you can really bring your best self to the interview. Next, dress smartly. Again, it goes without saying, but also can surprise you that people will maybe just turn up in just the casual gear for what is an important interview. So dress to impress. And particularly as well, if you're doing a video interview, tidy up your surroundings and present yourself confidently. And it will help you feel the part if you dress the part. And then finally, ask questions. This relates back well to the research section. So when you're doing that research to prepare you before an interview, have a look at those reports. If you've got access to the people that are interviewing you beforehand, have a look on the LinkedIn. Think about, what sort of roles that they've, or projects or estates that they've had experience with, and really be able to tailor your questions to that. But also just really take that moment beforehand to reflect, what do you want to understand? Is it about the role, the qualification you'll get after, the general culture and the vibe of the office? And take some time beforehand, go prepared with questions. I always think it looks brilliant, even if people do it because it just looks the part, is when they've got it written down on a note paper in a notepad. At the end of the interview, they get it out, make a few notes, and it just really shows someone that you respect the time and you're really interested in the role. Next slide. And that is the end of my slides. So thank you so much. And again, to all the other amazing speakers too. I learned so much from today's session, and thank you so much for hosting to CAAV. Now we're on to the exciting Q&A panel, so over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. Gosh, it's been fascinating. I've been doing this job for 30 years, and I've learnt heaps in the last couple of hours. So, and it's also making me grateful for my career choice as well, hearing everybody else's inspiring stories. So I'm really hugely grateful to the presenters. And now I've got to marshal my way through lots of questions. So, which has been brilliant. We've had such good feedback. We will not get through them all, but we'll find a way of condensing those and feeding back to everybody, because they have been so good. I'm really grateful for people's participation. So we've got all the presenters back on screen, I hope. And what I'm going to try and do, probably fairly badly, if I can, I'm going to marshal and group questions together. And I might be able to answer some, and Otherwise, hopefully some of the panel members will jump in. And what I can say is what we can't answer in the next 19 minutes, because I do want to finish for everybody's sake by 12:30, is, we'll come up with an FAQ sheet or some sort of summary of all the great stuff that we've learned this morning. So I hope that's okay for everyone. So to kick things off, I've tried to sort of pick a mix of questions, not all on the same theme, but which also is difficult because I'm looking at all these great questions in front of me and not knowing how we'll get through them, but we'll do our best. There's a common theme about work experience, which I've been asked in a number of different guises, and the sort of gist of it is, how do I identify sources of work experience and then follow that up into practice, because it ultimately flows back to Claire's point about CVs and having good work experience on CVs is so important. I suppose, and panel jump in a sec, but my sort of starting point would be the CAV website, and there's a search for surveyors button on there, and look for somebody local to you, and then email them or write to them a nice letter asking for work experience, and generally you will get a good response, because like-minded people like us on the panel will want to help the next gen, and we always try and take on work experience. So write and contact, and my other advice would be try and do it in a variety of different firms. You can see the sort of breadth and variety of the job involved from some of the presenters, and it'll help you, A, it'll look good on your CV, and B, it will help you channel your interests into the different parts of surveying, and try and stay for at least a week. Again, just doing it for a short period, I don't think is great for the receiver or the giver in terms of work experience, and you get a better feel. The other thing I would say is, in the years I've done it and the experience people we've had, you can treat it as a sort of elongated job interview as well, which works well for both parties. So on this important theme of work experience, I'm very conscious of time. Does anybody else want to jump in with things I've probably missed? There's lots, I know, but anybody want to say anything in addition, please do, from the panel.
I'm happy to just add to that, David. I think you've summarised that really well. But what I would say is that proactivity really goes a long way. Unfortunately, work experience, as nice as it would be to just land in your lap as an opportunity, sadly, that's not the way the world works. So I'd really encourage you all to be super proactive. That really shows an employer that you have some of the key attributes we'd be looking for, that proactivity, that initiative, to get in touch and say, I'm really keen. So yeah, I would advise perhaps to go on some different employer websites, find a careers or a recruitment email address, and just get in touch, introduce yourself, and just that proactivity alone will go a long way for you.
Yeah, Joe, I completely agree. And often even that sort of handwritten letter, they're so rare these days, aren't they? But if I get one of those, it really makes me sit up and, and I had one this summer actually, and somebody wrote a really nice handwritten letter, way better than my handwriting, and I was super impressed, and they got a job all summer at our water park, and it was great for them and good for us. But yeah, I agree about that proactivity point, Joe, entirely. Anything else on work experience? This real important topic. What are other firms doing on work experience to encourage?
David, I would just say, sorry, I'm Emma from Carter Jonas. For those of you who didn't meet me earlier, everything Joanna said and you have said has been spot on. I would also just add and say, keep an open mind. Don't narrow your search. Try and get a feel for the different areas within rural, but also just see what's available around you local. It doesn't necessarily have to be, big firms. It can be a range of different employers. So I think it's just getting out there and being proactive, like Joanna said, and trying to get that experience under your belt. Any sort of experience within the industry will also be beneficial. So yeah, keep an open mind.
Yeah, brilliant. Sorry, yeah, go on, Henry. Yeah.
I was going to add to that. Work experience is as much about finding out what you don't want to do as what you do want to do. So don't be worried about going to different firms, different sectors, and whatever you end up doing, because it's just important to find that out as what you're interested in.
Yeah, well said. I remember doing a week of work experience with an architect firm, and I definitely worked out I didn't want to do that because I was hopeless at it. But look, we're going to change subjects. And oh, sorry, somebody was going to say something.
Oh, no, I was just going to say very quickly, there are a few virtual work experiences available online. I don't think there's one as particularly into rural surveying, just general surveying, which touches on rural, but having a look online to see what's available to complete for free.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Claire. The next, just sort of changing tack a bit, we had a really good one here. What kind of personal traits help someone succeed in this rural surveying industry, which I liked? And we've covered a bit of that in the presentations, and panel jump in, but I wrote down, well, after I saw that question in the chat box, adaptable, confident, chatty, organized, and being a conjurer, because, you know, in a plate spinner, which, you know, I've spent my career doing, and you just hope you don't drop one, but if you drop one, you catch it before it lands. But I think all of those sort of hang true in the sort of wonderful variety that we have to deal with day to day. But what any other adjectives from the panel in terms of personal traits that I've missed?
I think, David, actually ability to have empathy with people, because there are always two sides in a discussion and negotiation. And to be able to understand the other person's perspective is actually really, really beneficial. So I think empathy, and also trust. I think to be able to build trust, whether it's with a client, with a boss, with with the other side that you're working with. So I think those would be three I'd add.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, James. Any other offerings? We'll keep moving on, because as I say, I want to try and cover a bit of variety, and there's a lot to get through. But we had a question, and I'm sort of paraphrasing it, but it's a middle-age career changer returner, which you do see, and we have seen, and I've had various people sort of coming ex-army and training under me and going on to brilliant careers, but this question is about the panel's view of, in that situation, any advice of a return to work for a rural surveyor from a middle-aged career changer. Is there anything different that you would do from somebody just leaving university or the apprentice route? Any views from the panel?
If I could quickly chirp in from, I guess, the recruitment angle, not actually working in the industry.
Please.
But massive. It's really encouraged, and from our experience at Strutton Parker, we've got some incredible success stories of people making that career change. My advice would be to reach out to either our recruitment email, or if you get hold of someone's email in one of the offices, to speak to them. It's the same process of coming in and working and alongside studying towards your accreditation, but it may be that because of your experience that you've got already, that you can come in at maybe a slightly higher level. So many of the skills are transferable, particularly those attributes on that adaptability, and so yeah, I think there's sometimes a resistance. Definitely just reach out, get your name on the radar of the recruiters, the hiring managers, and when those roles come up, that's how my advice on that point.
Yeah, brilliant, Claire. You must have been reading the questions, because there was another one, maybe we can link to it. Well, there's sort of two parts of it, again, paraphrasing. Is a degree required to get into estate management? And if so, what degree? And the sort of, and we've covered that a bit in terms of the sort of degree versus apprentice route, but anybody jump in. But I like the second part of it. Are transferable skills acceptable? And the answer to that is definitely. And I've seen that to very good effect. And just linking a sort of third part of that, but again, the panel jump in, but are there any good sources or sites for recruiters into rural surveying? There was a question asked in the box as well. And again, the answer to that, there are, we'll probably maybe formulate a sort of FAQ sheet off the back of this, but there are some specialist rural recruiters such as Helen Astle and others, but there are, and also jobs are obviously regularly posted on the CAV jobs board as well on the website. But can any panel views in terms of transferable skills and recruiters? Just trying to lump 3 or 4 issues together.
I'm happy.
Anybody
Yeah, I'm happy to share some advice. Just from a promotion of roles as well. LinkedIn is a great platform for job hunting and exploring opportunities. So would certainly recommend you visiting there if you're looking for opportunities within rural. Transferable skills absolutely are welcomed. I think we know from the property industry as a whole, there's a lot of diversification happening, new types of sectors that we're working in. So the element of transferable skills now is needed more than ever, I would say, to bring the different types of skill sets that we need to keep on evolving within the industry. We work as an employer, we work with veterans, we work with people who have previously been school teachers, you know, completely different careers that have made that transition into the industry. Certainly with things like property management, estate management, there are a lot of transferable skills, and you don't necessarily have to do the RICS qualification initially. You can get that experience and you have the opportunity then, where you are experienced as an individual, to do an associate pathway rather than going through the graduate process, which we've outlined as part of today. So there are different opportunities, but again, it's kind of going back to what we've said before. Reach out to the employers, reach out to the recruitment teams, and they'll certainly welcome conversations with anybody that's looking to make that transition and guide them, and certainly match them with any suitable opportunities.
Brilliant, thank you, Emma. That's wonderful. I'm going to keep the ball rolling and changing tack. I like this question, and I can answer it from my perspective in a few seconds. But what maybe a couple of others jump in. What inspired you to choose a career in the rural sector? And I suppose my background was a family farm in Durham, not particularly large or in terms of sort of viable sort of economically, but wanting a sort of rural-based career. So I went to the Royal Agricultural College and did a land management degree, and then into a rural surveying practice, starting in Peterborough. And it was not managing and running my own farm, but managing and running others. I suppose but it was my rural farming background that sort of inspired me. But there's loads and loads of examples of completely non-rural backgrounds that come into exactly the same sort of role as I've done. But any other sources of inspiration for rural careers? Maybe let's have a view from Scotland, Martin, without putting you on the spot.
So what inspired me into the sector was I enjoyed, I'm from a farming background in Cumbria in the Lake District, and I enjoyed buying and selling livestock. So I started working in the local livestock market, then diversified into the land agency department, and then studied land management and went from there.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Martin. Well, let's have anybody from a non-rural background or farming background that has chosen this career route. Give us an example from the panel. Any others? No. Well, just sort of going back to the apprentice route, and I might sort of dip on Alice here, but because that's been really interesting. You know, do you do a full-time degree, the degree apprentice, or a postgrad? I mean, there's another of different routes, haven't there, which Joe's articulated brilliantly. But there was a question about what's the difference between going to university and doing an apprenticeship. And I know, Alice, you did a bit of a sort of hybrid, but can you maybe tell us a little bit about that? Would be kind.
Yeah, of course. So I suppose initially I went to university, not too sure what I wanted to do job-wise. So I just did an environmental science degree. It's what interested me at the time. But actually, I since joined Carter Jonas, and I did a master's degree apprenticeship, which is just a 2-year programme, as opposed to the undergraduate, which would be a 5-year, which I found to be quite useful in the fact that I was learning. It was totally online, 1 day a week, and the other 4 days I was in the office working, which gave me loads of practical experience whilst being paid. I didn't subsequently have to pay my tuition fees for my postgraduate degree, which was a massive consideration, having done an undergraduate degree, which some might see that I didn't utilise. So I suppose for me, it was gaining that hands-on experience, being within the industry, getting to know people, which compared to university is quite a different approach, I would say.
Yeah.
And
But
I just echo that. Sorry, just to jump
sorry,
in. Hi
Jodie.
everyone,
Thank you.
I'm Jodie. I'm a final year apprentice at Dalcour McLaren, studying at Harper Adams. So I completely echo what Alice has said, and I think the real advantage is the experience that you're exposed to from day one. So by the time you come to sit your APC, so your assessment of professional competence, you've got 5 years worth of experience under your belt. Compared to your university peers who have gone there full time, they might only have 2 years as a minimum. So I think it just shows that you're experienced and you're exposed to so much more that you might not necessarily be if you go to university full time. So when it comes to sitting that final interview, you've just got so much more to talk about and really show off your experience, which is what the assessors are looking for, really. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of the apprenticeship route.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jodie. Yeah.
Jump in a second on what sort of Jodie's just said. Having just qualified earlier this year, I have 4 or 5 years experience behind me, whereas if you did a undergraduate degree and went to then sort of subsequently got a job, you would only have 2 years experience. So in effect, I've got double the worth of practical experience, which is what the job's all about. So I would definitely echo what Jodie just said about getting that extra experience, which just definitely helps, and it just gets you out engaged with clients.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you both. Yeah, really good to have that sort of real life insight of what's happening. We've got a couple of minutes. A quick one. Panel views, please, on the value of T-level agriculture, crops or animal management. Is it valued as a qualification? Any views on that? It's quite specific, but.
Yeah, I would say on that one, the T-level is becoming a lot more popular actually as a kind of a vocational qualification. The T-level is very much recognised in terms of its contribution towards sort of tariff points, UCAS, and will be equivalent. So I really encourage whoever's asked that question just to have a look and explore how the T-level output, what is the equivalent to that when you're looking at the entry requirements of the routes into rural, because the way that the entry requirements are set up is that they often put the more well-known qualifications first, like GCSEs, A-levels will normally come first, but they'll also then put or equivalent, and they'll list the equivalents. So I just encourage you to have a look at that. But I would imagine that an agricultural T-level would be extremely valuable. I imagine it's quite a hands-on course and approach. So certainly for some of the career options we've discussed today, perhaps would be a really interesting way to get into the profession. So would definitely encourage you to look into that a bit further, and it certainly would be interesting to an employer.
Thank you, Jo. Brilliant. Last question, and I'll sort of paraphrase it because there's been some good ones. It's sort of centered on tech and innovation and sort of digital Severa. People are saying they've got those skills. Is there a role within rural surveying? And I think we've touched a bit on this for sort of between James and Mo's excellent presentations. Do you want to say anything else on that, James? Is there a place for it? I think I know the answer, but share some enthusiasm with us.
Is this a question, David, just about tech generally in the industry rather than specifically in farming? Is that the question?
That they've got an interest in tech and gaming and things generally, that world. Is there a place for them in our world?
I mean, I suspect this could benefit from a few of us having a go at this, so I'll be really quick. But I think absolutely, I think tech is an incredibly important part of what we do, whether that is the likes of ChatGPT, whether that is the likes of GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and digital mapping, whether it's drawing, survey data, whether it's visualizations of schemes or projects. So I'll pass on to somebody else just in the last minute to add to that.
Thanks, James. Drones is another one I wrote down as well in that bracket.
Yeah, lots of
Anybody
our
else?
team use drones. You know, it's quite interesting actually when the team are out flying drones, and we've shown them at various kind of careers events and things before, and people just don't realise that being out and flying drones like is a career. Like you actually can develop, you know, a career in doing that. It's vital data capture. It's really exciting, and it's really sort of cutting edge technology for the clients. They absolutely love it. So yeah, if you kind of can't imagine that there's a career, you know, using a game remote and flying things, that there absolutely is in this industry. You know, there's a huge amount of land that is affected by these projects. So it's impossible for us to get all across it quickly enough. So hence the need for drones and for innovative sort of data capture. So yeah, absolutely is the answer to the question.
Thank you, Jo. And I think given the time, I'm just going to draw things to a close in a quick sort of summing up, if I can. Firstly, thank you everybody for attending and listening and participating. There's been good audience participation, which is brilliant. Thank you everyone for that. I hope you found it as interesting as I have, and I know a lot about this topic, and I find it fascinating. Please do, as I said in the intro, go to the CAV website, the Roots Rural page, loads of information on that, university courses and links and information. So please do look at that. And you know, follow up on work experience. We chatted a little bit about that, so please watch out for that. Please follow the social channels and engage in that. We are going to release a couple of podcasts going forward in that vein. Thank you so much to the presenters. There's a huge amount of work goes into these things, so I'm enormously grateful for everybody's participation. And thank you also to Elaine and Sam at CAV Central for driving the tech behind the scenes. Again, a lot of prep goes into that. So we will probably follow up afterwards with some feedback from all the people taking part. And if we can sort of wrap up in terms of FAQs and sources of information, we'll try and follow. We don't want this just to be a sort of one-off event. We want to follow up to participants with information and sources of information and work experience, etc. So we will be following up afterwards. So watch out for all that. So without further ado, it's been quite a long session, but hopefully helpful. It is recorded, so you can follow up on certain bits afterwards. But thank you all very much again, presenters and participants alike, and we'll draw things to a close and let everybody get on with their day. But thank you, everyone. Goodbye for now.